Welcome to the Finely Tuned Infrastructure podcast by Rhythmic Technologies. Today we're going to talk about a management problem that it really starts small but can quickly become a major security issue for growing companies. We're talking about excess access, specifically why your developers and maybe even your sysadmins have way more permission than they actually need for their jobs.
Yeah, and the core of the issue is really just scalability. So many companies start out with these simple, broad Active Directory groups.
You mean things like developers or production access?
Exactly. And that works fine when you have, maybe 5 servers in one product. It's simple.
Okay, let's unpack this. So when does that simple system actually break? Because that initial simplicity, it feels so efficient right up until the moment it isn't.
It breaks the moment you have any kind of normal, predictable growth. We're not talking about some massive corporate merger, just launching a second product.
Or bringing on contractors for a specific project.
Exactly. Or even just getting serious about separating your staging and production environments. That simple 2-group structure, it implodes.
And when it implodes, the result is what the blog calls overprivileging. It says this isn't an exception. It's pretty much the default mode. Why does that happen so consistently?
Well, because without any granular control, IT teams are basically forced to grant access based on the highest possible need.
So if a developer needs access to just one staging server.
Right, but the only group available is the main developers group. They get full access to all development and staging systems across all your products. It's just the path of least resistance for IT, but it creates this huge internal risk.
Can you give us a concrete example of what that risk looks like?
Sure. Think about accidental impact. A developer is just troubleshooting a small bug on one application server. But because they're overprivileged, a simple typo, a mistake during that session, now has the potential to impact production data.
For a totally different product they have no business touching.
For a system they have zero reason to touch. It's not just a security breach risk, it's a reliability risk. The bigger that access blanket, the greater the chance of an outage from simple human error.
And once that access blanket is just spread across the whole organization, that operational risk turns right into a compliance nightmare.
Precisely. Audits become a real headache. I mean, if an auditor asks, so who has access to your customer data systems?
The only real answer is, well, everyone in the production group.
Right. You can't easily prove why the person working on an internal marketing site also has access to the billing system's production servers. Your security structure doesn't match job roles anymore.
Which leads right to the third problem, and this one is quantifiable. The manual management time consumption. This is where the IT team's budget and time just get eaten alive.
This is that hidden compounding cost. And
Yeah.
the blog post, it shared a really staggering metric on this.
Oh, yeah.
IT teams are reporting that they spend 30 to 40% of their time just on access-related tickets, on emergency grants, on quarterly access reviews.
30 to 40%. I mean, that's basically giving up almost 2 full days every single week just to police a system that's fundamentally broken.
It is. If 40% of your time is spent on, access detective work, who needs what? Granting temporary permissions, then trying to remember to revoke them, that's 40% less time for security innovation or hardening your systems.
And a lot of smaller companies see this and think, oh, that's enterprise-level complexity. We can put that off.
And that's the biggest misconception. These problems, they surface really, really early. The best time to fix this isn't when you have 20 products. It's when you have just a few different environments. Let's use the exact scenario from the blog. Imagine you have one main product, and it's got separate development, staging, and production environments. All good.
Okay.
Then you launch a second product, which needs its own dedicated systems. And now you bring in a contractor for a database migration. They need staging access for product A, but they absolutely must not touch production for product A or anything at all for product B.
And with those old, broad groups like developers, that scenario is, well, it's impossible to handle cleanly.
It's completely impossible. You either put the contractor in that broad group and they instantly get way too much access, or you're manually creating exceptions on every single server. And those manual exceptions, you can't track them, you can't audit them, you won't even remember them 6 months later.
That's access drift right there. So the second your business gets any kind of granularity, you've outgrown those simple controls. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the solution is all about automation. We're talking group policy objects and organizational units.
This is the fix. This is what stops access drift cold. Group policy objects, or GPOs, they let you define all your access policies centrally. So
Hmm.
instead of logging into every single server to manage local access, Active Directory does the enforcement for you.
And the beauty of this is that you're just using the native Windows infrastructure. You're using Active Directory, no new software to buy.
That's right. And crucially, it enforces those controls constantly. So, talk about access drift. Let's say someone manually adds themselves to the local administrators group on a server during an emergency.
A firefight situation.
Exactly. But when group policy refreshes, it automatically removes that manual addition. It just overwrites it.
That's the game changer right there. The system is self-enforcing. How quickly does that autocorrection happen?
It happens during the regular policy refresh cycles, which is usually within 90 minutes. The GPO enforces the membership list for local groups, so it just reverts any manual changes that don't match the central policy.
But for that to work, you can't just apply it randomly. You need the right foundation. And that starts with the organizational unit, or OU structure.
The OU structure is basically the map that Active Directory uses to apply all the rules. And it has to reflect your business operations first, not your technical architecture.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if you organize your OES by technical function, like all web servers here, all database servers there, you still have the same problem. You have to organize them by the products and environments they actually serve.
So walk us through the structure that the Rhythmic blog recommends for this kind of growing company.
Okay, so the structure starts with your main domain. Then underneath that, it branches out to reflect the business. You'd have an OU for product A, and inside that, you'd have sub-OS for production, staging, and development.
And then you just mirror that for the other products.
You mirror that exact structure for product B, production, staging, and development. So a server for product B staging literally lives in the product B staging OU. Its physical location in that structure defines its security.
And what about systems that are shared between products?
For those, you'd have a shared infrastructure OU, which you can then break down further into things like databases or monitoring systems.
That logic just makes the access decisions automatic. If a server is in the product A staging OU, it should only be accessible by groups allowed to touch product A staging, which then leads to creating the right security groups.
Precisely. And the groups have to match job functions, not these vague, broad roles. You need granular groups that clearly state their purpose.
So let's talk about the specific group examples the post uses.
You move away from all developers,
Yeah.
and you create something like product A developers. That group might only get non-production access for product A. Then you could have product A deploy for the few people who need production deployment permissions.
And for that contractor we mentioned.
You'd have a group called product B contractors, maybe with an expiration date set in AD. And then specialty teams get their own groups too, like database admins or infrastructure monitoring.
And the benefit there is that when an auditor sees the group product A developers, you don't have to do any detective work. The name tells you exactly what it's for.
Your documentation just got a whole lot simpler. And the group policy objects then ensure that only those specific groups get local admin or remote desktop rights within their matching OS. It's all connected.
This sounds essential, but getting there requires a structured approach. The blog outlines a 5-step process: audit, design, create groups, build and test GPOs, and then migrate systematically. What's the biggest shock for organizations during that initial audit phase?
The universal realization every single time is that current access far, far exceeds what people actually need to do their jobs. The audit just documents this massive permissions buildup that happens over time.
Permissions get added in a rush, but they never get taken away.
Exactly. The audit shows you the exact patterns of unnecessary access that your new OU structure needs to fix.
And when it's time to actually migrate, what's the safest way to do it without breaking things?
You have to start small, with pilot groups. The systematic migration step means you pick a non-critical OU first, maybe a small dev environment, and you apply the new GPOs there. You watch, you confirm the access changes. You have to run the new system in parallel until you've tested every single access path. You can't just flip a switch overnight.
So let's talk about the payoff. So what? For the day-to-day IT team, what changes do they see in that first month?
Predictability. First, security becomes automatic. You stop fighting access drift. Because the GPO is always enforcing the rules, if someone adds temporary manual access, it just disappears within those 90 to 120 minutes of the policy refresh. It's gone.
So operations standardize.
They standardize completely. A new server automatically gets the right controls just based on where you place it in the OU structure. Zero manual config. Access requests change from this complicated investigation to a simple workflow. Add user to group, done.
And compliance must get so much easier.
Oh, it's transformative. Instead of spending weeks pulling manual reports for an auditor, you just provide GPO screenshots that show exactly which groups have access to which OS. You go from saying, we think we control access, to we can prove the system automatically controls access.
Finally, let's talk about managing the transition. You're making a big structural change. You have to manage how users experience it, especially that GPO timing.
Change management is so important. You have to be upfront that users will lose unnecessary access that they've built up over time. You have to communicate the why, that you're removing unneeded risk, not getting in their way.
And that timing aspect, the 90 to 120-minute refresh cycle.
Yeah, teams have to adapt to that slight predictable delay for emergency access. But what you gain is a reliable, auditable, self-enforcing system, which is just so much better than instant, unmanaged, and potentially dangerous manual access.
So, what does this all mean? The core message from Rhythmic's analysis seems pretty clear. If you're a growing company on Active Directory, waiting to do this is actively costing you time and exposing you to risk that just gets worse with every new product or team member.
And the key indicator for you, if you're listening, is how much time is spent on access tasks. If your IT team is spending anywhere near 30 to 40% of their time managing access, the investment in building this GPO and OU structure will pay for itself almost immediately, just in time savings alone. That level of admin overhead is just not sustainable.
That's really the bottom line. This conversation was based on a very comprehensive blog post by Rhythmic Technologies.
And as we like to do here, we base our discussions on these detailed sources,
Sure.
so you should know this entire dialogue was AI generated from their content.
To read the full original post and really get into the technical details of designing your OU structure, you should head over to rhythmictech.com. Thank you for joining us.